Welcome to Recaply X, your movie recap in a flash. We bring the drama, the action, and the twists in minutes. The movie begins with a father named Michel leaving the house and riding his bike to a clothing store. He considers buying a Spider-Man costume for Halloween and spends some time looking at it. Then, he knocks on the store door for the owner to let him in, but the man tells him the store is still closed. Michel doesn't understand and keeps insisting, but the man is adamant that the store is not open yet. Eventually, Michel leaves, but as he's walking away, someone bumps into him, almost causing him to lose his money. After retrieving it, he gets back on his bike and heads to school. When he arrives, he parks his bike and hides his money in his shoe before entering. In class, Michel secretly films Stella, the girl he likes, but stops when she notices him. The teacher also catches him with his phone, confiscates it, and asks if he wants to repeat the year like the bully named Ivan. Michel doesn't respond, but Ivan finds the situation amusing and jokes with his friend Brando. The school principal enters the classroom and announces that Police Inspector Giovanna wants to speak with them. Giovanna greets the students and asks if anyone knows anything about their missing classmate Martino. Ivan and Brando make jokes, but Giovanna ignores them and emphasizes that anyone who has seen or heard anything about Martino should inform the police immediately. After she finishes, an officer from her team hands her something, and she suddenly looks at Michel, who appears nervous. At that moment, Giovanna approaches his desk and tells him he forgot his lunch. Michel, embarrassed, takes his lunch and thanks her, calling her Mom. After Giovanna leaves, Ivan and Brando tease Michel because his mother brought him lunch to school. Michel ignores them, but notices his nose starts bleeding. He quickly leaves to clean himself up in the bathroom, where he hears a noise and hides in one of the stalls. After a while, Ivan and Brando break part of the stall door, drag him out, and demand money. Despite Michel saying he doesn't have any, they search his shoe and find the costume money. Michel feels upset but is too scared to complain. Ivan gives him a chance to run, and Michel tries to escape but ends up falling in front of other students, who laugh at him. Later, Michel returns home, where his sister Candela seems happy to see him. Michel, wanting to be alone, goes to the kitchen and greets the cook, who tells him there's food. However, he says he's not interested after learning his mom made it. In his room, he opens his computer and looks at Stella's social media page, contemplating whether to send her a friend request. Meanwhile, Candela keeps asking him how no one recognizes Superman, but Michel doesn't respond. After sending the friend request to Stella, he checks his box for money, but only finds a small amount. He wants to buy a Halloween costume to attend Stella's party. Eventually, he goes to a nearby store to buy a cheap costume. The shop owner offers him a costume of an ancient Chinese superhero. Although Michel doesn't like it, the man convinces him it looks good. Michel asks about the superhero's powers, and the man tells him he'll discover them on his own. Meanwhile, Giovanna receives a video of Martino telling his parents he's leaving because he's tired of home. Giovanna doesn't understand why he did this and finds it strange since he's a smart boy. That night, she returns home and sees Michel wearing his Halloween costume, looking depressed. She asks why he didn't go to the party, and he says he doesn't like the costume because he doesn't even know who the superhero represents. Giovanna doesn't think it's a big deal and says a superhero can be a good person who fights real crime. Michel asks if that's like his father, and Giovanna tells him his father also fought criminals, but was just a police officer like her before he passed away. Michel continues to debate whether to attend the party, and Giovanna encourages him to go. Eventually, Michel decides to go. When he arrives, Stella is happy to see him and compliments his outfit. Brando notices Michel and asks about his costume, to which Michel replies that it's a Chinese superhero costume. Stella says it looks nice and mentions she has visited China before. Stella asks Michel how long he'll stay in town and says she hopes to stay a long time because she loves being near the sea. Michel likes the idea, but as they talk, they suddenly notice the guests gathering around the TV. When they approach, Stella sees a video of herself on the screen. Brando reveals he got the videos from Michel's phone after the teacher confiscated it earlier that day. Stella looks at Michel, who feels deeply embarrassed and runs to the bathroom. Upset about what happened, he complains about his costume and says he doesn't know what to do. Suddenly, lightning strikes the area, and Michel Decour decides to leave through the window and head home, feeling defeated. The next morning, Michel wakes up to find his dog staring at him strangely. Ignoring it, he goes to the bathroom to brush his teeth. Looking in the mirror, he discovers he has become invisible. Michel is shocked and doesn't know what to do. When his mother enters the room and doesn't see him, she asks where he is. He quickly writes her a note, saying he went to school, prompting her to leave. Michel wraps himself in clothes and decides to go to school. But as he stands outside the building, he changes his mind, thinking he's become a bad person now that he's invisible. Before leaving, he sees Ivan putting a starter pistol in his bag, which gives Michel an idea. Michel enters the classroom, takes the pistol from Ivan's bag, and fires a shot at the board near the teacher. He then leaves the pistol with Ivan, making everyone think Ivan was responsible. The teacher scolds him. Meanwhile, Michel sneaks into the teacher's office and writes the correct answers on his exam paper to get a good grade. Later, he sabotages Brando during a tennis match, causing him to lose, which angers Brando's father. In the locker room, Michel plays a prank by moving a tennis ball, scaring Brando. Feeling pleased, Michel leaves the school and notices some girls heading to the locker room. He follows them inside. When one of the girls throws a towel on the bench, it falls on Michel. The girls realize someone is under the towel and are shocked. Unfortunately, Michel's powers start to weaken, and he becomes visible again, leaving him embarrassed. When the girls remove the towel, they see Michel and scream loudly. The school principal finds out, and Giovanna comes to take him home. In the car, Giovanna tells him that she doesn't understand why he entered the girls' changing room, and also tells him that he was about to be expelled from school. But Michel doesn't respond to her. The next day at school, a psychologist working with the police named Basile arrives and announces that Brando is missing. He advises the students to express their feelings instead of running away from them. Everyone looks at Michel mockingly because of what happened the day before. Suddenly, Michel notices that he has started disappearing again. He covers his arms and waits for the bell to ring so he can leave the classroom. When he returns home, he finds Candela in his room. He quickly turns to the wall and asks her to leave. She doesn't understand why he's kicking her out, but she pretends to leave, opening and closing the door again. As he takes off his clothes, Candela sees that he has become invisible and screams loudly. Michel quickly asks her to stop screaming, and she agrees. He tells her that this power is likely because of his superhero-like suit. Candela tells him it looks like magical pajamas that make people invisible for a while. Michel is upset about his new powers, but Candela tells him that he's now a superhero and can save people from danger. Michel responds that no one needs saving, but Candela insists that he should call himself the Invisible Boy. The next day, Basile tells Giovanna and the police that he doesn't see anything unusual in the disappearance of Brando and Martino. He explains that the boys might have run away from the pressures they were facing at home. Giovanna suspects there's more to it, but Basile confirms that from the messages the boys sent to their families, it's clear they weren't kidnapped. After a long time, Giovanna returns home, and Michel is reading a book about superheroes. When she enters his room, she sees that he quickly took off his clothes, so she thinks he's not there. When she goes to her room, she calls someone to complain about Michel's behavior, saying she feels that he knows he's not her biological son and that he's adopted. Michel is shocked when he hears this but doesn't say anything. He goes to the beach to think about what he heard. Stella is there and sees a swing moving on its own. She approaches and asks who's there, whether it's a ghost or an angel. Michel draws a smiling face on the ground. Stella asks if that's what he looks like, but he doesn't reply. She invites him to swing with her, and he does. She asks him to be her friend, and Michel agrees. He's surprised and asks if she isn't afraid of him. She replies that she's not. After a while, she remembers she has to leave for her training and asks if she'll see him again. He says yes, and she leaves. Michel is happy, but suddenly he sees a strange blind man watching him, even though he's still invisible. The man walks away, leaving Michel confused. The next day at school, Michelle apologizes to Stella for what happened, but she tells him it's okay. He notices that she's drawing a smiling face on her book, which makes him happy. That night, he sneaks into her house, and she lets him in after he draws a smiling face on her window. She asks him many questions about She asks him many questions about himself, and he notices that he's starting to become visible again, so he quickly escapes. He returns home, and Candela encourages him to tell Stella the truth. He decides to take her advice. Meanwhile, Stella is training at the gym with her mother, but is distracted and makes many mistakes. Her mother leaves to get coffee, and while Stella is alone, a man appears and knocks her out with a sedative. When she loses consciousness, he kidnaps her and leaves. Michelle arrives and sees what happened. He tries to stop the man, but can't do anything. After the man leaves, Michelle calls the police. He tells Giovanna that he feels guilty for not being able to save Stella, but she reassures him and tells him they will find her. Elsewhere, Stella is in a lab where experiments are being conducted on her. After they finish, they tell their leader that she's not who they're looking for. The guards move her to a hiding place, where she sees Brando and Martino. The next day, Michelle discovers that his suit is missing, but he learns that Giovanna washed it, and now it's smaller. When Candela tries it on, it doesn't make her invisible. Michelle confronts Giovanna angrily about the suit. Giovanna says she washed it because it was dirty, but Michelle doesn't care and tells her he hates her, which shocks her. The housekeeper asks Michelle not to talk to Giovanna that way, but Michelle says she's not his mother. Giovanna is stunned when she hears this, but before she can respond, Michelle leaves and breaks a glass behind him. He then goes to the sea to calm himself. The man he met earlier approaches him and tells him that the suit has nothing to do with his powers. Michelle is surprised and asks if he kidnapped Stella, but the man denies it. Michelle realizes that the man can read his thoughts and asks how he did that. The man says his name is André and claims to be Michelle's father. Michelle says his father is dead, but André says that's what he was told. André then tells him about a nuclear radiation incident in Russia long ago that gave some people superpowers. These people were called the Specials and were taken to be experimented on for military purposes. In the camp, André met Yelena, Michelle's mother, and they fell in love. When they had Michelle, they decided to escape so their son wouldn't become part of the experiments. Soldiers pursued them, so Yelena told André to escape with Michelle, while she stayed behind to buy time. Unfortunately, the leader discovered her location and killed her. André continues, saying he fled with Michelle and searched for a safe place until he left Michelle with Giovanna. Michelle realizes he inherited his mother's powers, but remains skeptical of André's story. He asks if André can freely read people's minds, and André confirms this. Meanwhile, Giovanna is worried that Michelle hasn't returned home. When Detective Basile sees her, he asks what happened. She tells him that Michelle said she's not his mother and feels like he knows things about her. Suddenly, they receive a report about a strange man with a boy, so they head to the location. Before the police arrive, André teaches Michelle how to control his powers and erases the hunter's memory. He gives Michelle a suit that allows him to be invisible without taking off his clothes. When the police arrive, André decides to leave, telling Michelle that they'll stay connected because their minds are linked. He warns him about the villains behind the Russian experiments, as they know about him and want to capture him. After the police question the hunter, Giovanna asks Michelle to come home. Basile takes him home, and Michelle tries on the new suit in his room. When Basile enters the room, Michelle quickly hides the suit and goes downstairs for dinner. While they're eating, Michelle notices bloodstains on Basile's shirt and realizes he's dangerous. Basile tries to stop him from escaping and tells him that if he calls the police, his friends will die. But Michelle uses his powers to escape, and Basile remains impressed by Michelle's strength and tells him he resembles his mother. Michelle doesn't care and escapes, but Basile locks him in his room. Michelle uses his secret bed to escape. Outside, he sees Ivan on his bike, stops him, and asks him to run away together. Ivan is confused because he's talking to someone invisible, but Michelle insists they must leave. After a while, Giovanna arrives home and finds the place messy. She wonders what happened. André knocks on her door, and she goes out to meet him. At the same time, Stella discovers she can leave the hideout and tries to seek help. Brando and Martino help her move, and she quietly steps out to find her way to the light beacon. A bit farther away, Ivan stops the bike, and Michel tells him the truth. Ivan is shocked, but Michel explains their friends are in danger and that Basily is one of the villains. Ivan admits he suspected the psychiatrist because he's dealt with many like him before. When Michel asks why, Ivan says he has ADH and was thinking about how to find their missing friends. By coincidence, Stella reaches the beacon, draws a smiley face on it, and directs it toward the sky. Michel sees it and understands she's trying to send him a message. When they head toward the light, they discover their friends are held captive on a ship. But someone grabs Stella and turns off the beacon. Ivan and Michel fear she's been captured. Michel uses his ability to vanish and plans to enter the ship. Ivan strikes the power unit to trigger an alarm to distract the guards. Inside the ship, Michel sees a room with Basily and another person watching a video from Giovanna's car. In the video, Andre thanks her for being a good mother to Michel. She realizes Michel is in danger, and Michel accidentally knocks something over in the room. Basily and his companion hear the sound and go out to investigate. Michel follows them. As he tries to open the cage, he finds someone on the other side unlocking it. He sees Stella being moved to another cage. After locking her up, Michel attacks the guards, frees Stella and the children, locks the guards in the cage, and makes Stella and the kids happy with their freedom. Then Michel removes his mask and reveals himself. Stella is shocked and tells him she didn't know it was him. Michel confirms it, but before they can talk further, Brando and Martino say they need to leave. Before they move, Stella mentions a man who needs rescuing on the other side of the ship. Michel says he can go alone, but Stella suggests going with him since she knows where the man is. Brando and Martino start searching for an exit, and Stella takes Michel to see the man she was talking about. When they see the man, Stella moves closer to Michel and points a gun at him. Michel is shocked and asks if she's one of them. She tells him she's not Stella. Michel doesn't understand what's happening, but the man they tried to rescue suddenly touches her, and she loses consciousness. The man introduces himself as Claw and says he can make people do whatever he wants just by touching them. He talks to Michel about his abilities and says they are alike. Michel vanishes and begins attacking the guards in an attempt to escape. Before he can flee, Claw tells him he won't be able to escape and threatens to kill Stella if he tries anything else. He adds that he lost Michel once at home and won't let it happen again. Michel says he was never at his home, but Claw says he was there under the name Basily. He adds that he touched Basily and Stella to make them follow his orders. Michel still refuses to be part of Claw's plans and speaks his mind, but Claw orders his men to deploy the submarine from the ship to escape. Then he tells Michel it's time to leave and that his mother is waiting for them. Michel says Yelena is dead, but Claw says she's still alive and has become one of them. He adds that she ordered him to bring Michel back to her. Elsewhere, Giovanna and Andre find Ivan and take him to the ship. Before entering Giovanna, Andre senses Michel isn't inside the ship. He also notices a bomb in the ship that's about to explode. Before leaving, Giovanna sees Martino and Brando asking for help. She rescues them and opens another door on the ship, finding Basily inside. He appears very innocent and thanks her for saving him, but she's angry and asks him about her son. Basily says he doesn't know what she's talking about. Giovanna doesn't believe him. Then Andre arrives and says Basily isn't lying. He insists they must leave the ship because the bomb will explode. As soon as they leave, the ship indeed explodes. Giovanna shows concern for Michel. In the submarine, Claw says Stella will return to her people in a safety capsule. He explains that Michel isn't an ordinary person and is much more important than he realizes. He adds that the special forces are not like humans who waste their lives. When Stella enters the capsule, Claw says it's for the best because Michel will be part of a suitable family, not one with ordinary people. Michel is unhappy with this. As his anger rises, he begins breaking things in the submarine. Claw is shocked by what's happening, but Michel keeps going until he causes an explosion. He enters the safety capsule As he closes the door, Claw tells him Yelena will be upset with him, but Michel responds that his mother is dead. The capsule takes him and Stella to the surface. When they return to land, everyone is happy about their return and admires Michel's abilities. As he sneezes, Giovanna quickly gives him a blanket and looks relieved he's alive. At that moment, Andre leaves, and Michel tells Giovanna he's going to meet his father. Michel tries to make him stay, but he says he has to go and that they'll stay in touch, and he'll know when his son needs him. Michel asks why they kidnapped Stella when he was the one they were looking for. Andre says it doesn't matter anymore. What matters now is that no one remembers what happened. Later, Stella appears walking outside the room, and Michel goes out to meet her. She tells him she was looking for him and says she's happy about the good moments they shared over the past days. Michel says the same, but adds that she'll soon forget about it. Stella doesn't understand, but Michel asks her to meet other people. As she walks away, Andre uses his powers to erase the memories of everyone who knew what happened. The next day, a police negotiator asks Basili and Giovanna about the children who were rescued, but they just don't remember anything. The negotiator asks Giovanna to take the credit because she was the one who brought the children back. She leaves the office and meets the press, claiming the credit for finding the missing children. At school, Ivan and Brando try to bully Michel, but he responds that he won't fight them. He tells Ivan that he knows he's not a bad person, but suffers from attention disorder. Brando tells him if he wants to vent his anger, he should take it out on his father, who is always yelling at him. Both are shocked and leave Michel alone. As he's leaving, he sees Stella and asks if she'll attend the school party. Stella tells him she doesn't want to celebrate her kidnapping. She starts walking away and asks Michel if he'd like to walk with her, and he agrees. Elsewhere, Gundy tells his boss that the mission failed and Michel escaped. The boss, who has the power of invisibility, gets upset but says there's good news. Michel's twin sister, Natasha, was found in Morocco. The leader seems happy, and it turns out Natasha is Yelena. The surprise is that Yelena also had a twin, and Andrij escaped with them while she kept fighting the soldiers. Although Michel initially didn't want his powers, he eventually accepts them and saves the day. He also manages to meet his father and learns more about his mother, who he still doesn't believe is alive. If you liked today's video, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell to receive all new updates. See you in the Welcome to Nextflix, your quick stop for movie recaps. Get all the highlights and mind-blowing twists in just minutes. The movie begins with a diver finding an old box at the bottom of the river and trying to open it. At the same time, workers are lowering a large pipe under the river to install it, but the pipe falls to the bottom of the river and hits the diver. At that moment, the box opens, and a very strange wooden mask emerges from it. The mask floats on the water until it disappears. We then see a bank employee named Stanley talking to his friend Charlie, complaining about his boring life. While they are talking, a woman named Tina approaches Stanley, saying she wants to open a bank account and invites him to a party at the bar where she works. However, it turns out she is deceiving him, as she has placed a camera in her bag to film the bank's vault for the gang she works with. At that moment, the gang leader, Dorian, watches the video and begins planning the bank robbery. His assistant, Freeze, tells him they need to inform Nico, the mafia boss, first to avoid trouble. Dorian refuses, saying he wants to rob the bank to get enough money to overthrow Nico and become the new mafia boss. We return to Stanley, who is at the mechanic's to pick up his car and head to Tina's party. The mechanic tells him his car is not yet repaired and gives him an old car to use temporarily. Stanley reluctantly takes the car and goes to the party. There he meets his friend Charlie and tries to enter with him, but the bouncers refuse and throw him out because he doesn't have a party ticket. It turns out that Dorian, the gang leader, owns the bar. Tina arrives and meets Stanley, telling him she works as a singer at the bar and asking why he didn't enter the party. Stanley avoids telling her he was thrown out so as not to embarrass himself in front of her, revealing his admiration for her. Afterward, he leaves. On his way, the car breaks down on a bridge, and he gets out to walk alone. Suddenly, he sees something strange in the river and thinks someone is drowning. He rushes to help, but discovers it's just trash. Among the trash, he finds the mask and takes it home, sensing something odd about it. Curious, Stanley picks up the mask to try it on and is shocked when the mask, which is enchanted, pulls itself toward his face and glows green. He decides to wear it, and the mask sticks to his face, causing him to spin hysterically around his house. Suddenly, Stanley transforms into a funny clown with a green face. He sneaks out of the house to avoid disturbing the neighbors. While walking, a magical alarm clock pops out of his pocket and starts bouncing. He pulls out a giant hammer from his pocket and smashes the alarm clock until it breaks the floor. His neighbor, annoyed by the noise, comes out to see what's happening. When she sees him, she screams loudly and grabs a gun to shoot him. Stanley escapes, leaping until he lands on the street, where his body flattens like a sheet of paper. He then returns to normal and continues walking down the street. Suddenly, he encounters a gang that tries to rob him. He quickly escapes, and they chase after him until they find him standing and making balloon animals like a clown. Suddenly, he turns one of the balloons into a weapon and fires at them, causing them to flee in fear. Afterward, he goes to the mechanic and punishes him for not fixing his car. The next day, Stanley wakes up thinking everything that happened the night before was just a dream. At that moment, Detective Mitch knocks on his door, asking if he saw a clown causing chaos in the neighborhood the previous night. Stanley is shocked to realize it was all real, but lies to the detective, claiming he knows nothing. Later, he goes to work and asks his friend Charlie where he went the previous night. Before Charlie can answer, their boss scolds Stanley for being late and warns him not to repeat it. While at work, a journalist named Peggy approaches Stanley to ask if he knows anything about the green-faced clown who appeared the night before. As usual, Stanley lies and denies seeing anything, but Peggy gives him her business card before leaving. Meanwhile, Dorian, the gang leader, meets with Nico, the mafia boss, who has learned about the bank robbery plan and Dorian's ambition to replace him as boss. Nico humiliates Dorian by forcing him to hold a golf ball in his mouth and threatens to kill him if he doesn't leave the city within 2 days. That night, Stanley hangs up a newspaper clipping with Tina's picture on it and decides to wear the mask to get closer to her and impress her. He transforms into the clown and immediately thinks of getting money to enter the bar where Tina works. Around the same time, Dorian's gang goes to the bank to rob it, but finds Stanley leaving the bank in a hysterical state. They realize he has already stolen the money. As they chase him, the police arrive, forcing the gang to flee. Stanley heads TIHR. Welcome to Netflix, your quick stop for movie recaps. Get all the highlights and mind-blowing twists in just minutes. The movie begins with a diver finding an old box at the bottom of the river and trying to open it. At the same time, workers are lowering a large pipe under the river to install it, but the pipe falls to the bottom of the river and hits the diver. At that moment, the box opens, and a very strange wooden mask emerges from it. The mask floats on the water until it disappears. We then see a bank employee named Stanley talking to his friend Charlie, complaining about his boring life. While they are talking, a woman named Tina approaches Stanley, saying she wants to open a bank account and invites him to a party at the bar where she works. However, it turns out she is deceiving him, as she has placed a camera in her bag to film the bank's vault for the gang she works with. At that moment, the gang leader, Dorian, watches the video and begins planning the bank robbery. His assistant, Freeze, tells him they need to inform Nico, the mafia boss, first to avoid trouble. Dorian refuses, saying he wants to rob the bank to get enough money to overthrow Nico and become the new mafia boss. We return to Stanley, who is at the mechanic's to pick up his car and head to Tina's party. The mechanic tells him his car is not yet repaired and gives him an old car to use temporarily. Stanley reluctantly takes the car and goes to the party. There he meets his friend Charlie and tries to enter with him, but the bouncers refuse and throw him out because he doesn't have a party ticket. It turns out that Dorian, the gang leader, owns the bar. Tina arrives and meets Stanley, telling him she works as a singer at the bar and asking why he didn't enter the party. Stanley avoids telling her he was thrown out so as not to embarrass himself in front of her, revealing his admiration for her. Afterward, he leaves. On his way, the car breaks down on a bridge, and he gets out to walk alone. Suddenly, he sees something strange in the river and thinks someone is drowning. He rushes to help but discovers it's just trash. Among the trash, he finds the mask and takes it home, sensing something odd about it. Curious, Stanley picks up the mask to try it on and is shocked when the mask, which is enchanted, pulls itself toward his face and glows green. He decides to wear it, and the mask sticks to his face, causing him to spin hysterically around his house. Suddenly, Stanley transforms into a funny clown with a green face. He sneaks out of the house to avoid disturbing the neighbors. While walking, a magical alarm clock pops out of his pocket and starts bouncing. He pulls out a giant hammer from his pocket and smashes the alarm clock until it breaks the floor. His neighbor, annoyed by the noise, comes out to see what's happening. When she sees him, she screams loudly and grabs a gun to shoot him. Stanley escapes, leaping until he lands on the street, where his body flattens like a sheet of paper. He then returns to normal and continues walking down the street. Suddenly, he encounters a gang that tries to rob him. He quickly escapes, and they chase after him until they find him standing and making balloon animals like a clown. Suddenly, he turns one of the balloons into a weapon and fires at them, causing them to flee in fear. Afterward, he goes to the mechanic and punishes him for not fixing his car. The next day, Stanley wakes up thinking everything that happened the night before was just a dream. At that moment, Detective Mitch knocks on his door, asking if he saw a clown causing chaos in the neighborhood the previous night. Stanley is shocked to realize it was all real, but lies to the detective, claiming he knows nothing. Later, he goes to work and asks his friend Charlie where he went the previous night. Before Charlie can answer, their boss scolds Stanley for being late and warns him not to repeat it. While at work, a journalist named Peggy approaches Stanley to ask if he knows anything about the green-faced clown who appeared the night before. As usual, Stanley lies and denies seeing anything, but Peggy gives him her business card before leaving. Meanwhile, Dorian, the gang leader, meets with Nico, the mafia boss, who has learned about the bank robbery plan and Dorian's ambition to replace him as boss. Nico humiliates Dorian by forcing him to hold a golf ball in his mouth and threatens to kill him if he doesn't leave the city within 2 days. That night, Stanley hangs up a newspaper clipping with Tina's picture on it and decides to wear the mask to get closer to her and impress her. He transforms into the clown and immediately thinks of getting money to enter the bar where Tina works. Around the same time, Dorian's gang goes to the bank to rob it, but finds Stanley leaving the bank in a hysterical state. They realize he has already stolen the money. As they chase him, the police arrive, forcing the gang to flee. Stanley heads TIHR, swinging the gang to flee. Stanley heads to the bar in a limousine, throwing money at the security guards to gain entry. Inside, he watches Tina perform and is mesmerized by her beauty, to the point where his tongue rolls out cartoonishly and his heart beats visibly out of his chest. He dances with her, and she doesn't recognize him as Stanley due to the mask. While they are dancing, Dorian's gang arrives at the bar and tells him a clown stole the bank's money. They spot Stanley dancing with Tina and point him out. Dorian orders one of his men to shoot Stanley, but the bullet hits his tie, causing it to fall off. Unnoticed, the tie transforms into a piece of Stanley's pajama fabric from before he wore the mask. Dorian's men start shooting at Stanley, who dodges the bullets and escapes. Detective Mitch arrives with the police and arrests Dorian, suspecting his gang of being involved in the bank robbery. By chance, Mitch sees the pajama fabric, which he remembers from when he visited Stanley's house, raising his suspicions. The next day, Stanley wakes up to Mitch knocking on his door. Panicked, Stanley opens his closet to change clothes, but finds the stolen bank money inside. The money falls to the floor, and Stanley quickly tries to hide it before opening the door for Mitch, who is there to question him about the robbery. Stanley's dog tries to open the closet containing the money, but Stanley stops him just in time and nervously tells Mitch he knows nothing about the money since he's just a bank employee. The detective at the police station reviews the cameras, and when he sees the clown stealing the money, he is forced to release Dorian from prison. At that moment, Dorian speaks to his men and tells them to spread the news in the city that he will give a $50,000 reward to anyone who catches the clown. He also asks Tina to look for him because she had been dancing with him. Tina then goes to meet Stanley at the bank where he works and asks him if he knows where the clown is, claiming she wants to meet and talk to him. Stanley is delighted and assures her that he knows him personally and will arrange for her to meet him at night. After finishing work, the detective, Nitch, and his assistant spy on Stanley because they are suspicious of him. They see him heading to the park alone, and shortly after, Tina arrives and meets him there. It becomes apparent that she has feelings for him. Stanley tells her he has to leave because the clown might show up soon. As soon as he leaves, Tina tries to follow him to confess her love, but she encounters the clown instead, not realizing that it is actually Stanley. Naturally, she is frightened, especially when he approaches her and speaks in a strange manner. Suddenly, Detective Nitch and his assistant arrive and surround the area. Tina quickly escapes and they arrest Stanley, handcuffing him. When they search him, Stanley manages to free himself, knocks them both out, handcuffs them instead, and escapes from the park. He locks the gate behind him to prevent them from chasing him, but he is surprised to find many police cars surrounding him, ordering him to surrender. He dons a Mexican costume, starts dancing, and forces the officers to dance as well. He then quickly escapes, removes the mask from his face, and when he notices the police searching for him, he spots journalist Peggy's car and gets in with her. She takes him to the newspaper warehouse and begins questioning him about why the police are chasing him. Stanley is forced to tell her the truth and explains everything about the mask. Before he can finish talking, Dorian and his gang arrive at the location. It turns out Peggy betrayed him by informing them after seeing him remove the mask, hoping to claim the $50,000 reward. Dorian orders his men to hang Stanley until he reveals where he hid the money stolen from the bank. Stanley eventually tells them the location. Dorian then wears the mask and transforms into a terrifying version of the clown. They tie Stanley up and throw him in front of the police station. Detective Nitch finds him and discovers a green mask in Stanley's pocket, which the gang planted on him. Believing Stanley is the clown, he locks him up in a cell. While in his cell, Stanley hears his dog outside the station. Suddenly, Tina visits him in jail and confesses that she used to work for Dorian's gang, but now loves him and knows he is the clown. As soon as she leaves the station, Dorian's gang spots her and starts chasing her. Stanley watches everything from his cell window. While Tina is running, Dorian intercepts her and captures her. Meanwhile, Stanley's dog manages to jump up to the cell window. Stanley grabs the dog, brings him inside, and instructs him to steal the cell keys from the police officer. Once freed, Stanley knocks out the officer, takes his gun, and coincidentally encounters Detective Nitch. Stanley threatens him with the gun, handcuffs both Nitch and the officer, and escapes. Erzrenia handcuffs both Nitch and the officer and escapes the station to rescue Tina. At the same time, the city's mayor is at mob boss Nick's bar, conducting a press conference to raise funds for the city. Suddenly, Dorian, wearing the mask, enters and orders his gang to shoot Nick. Nick tries to shoot Dorian, but is shocked to find that the bullets have no effect. Dorian collects the bullets in his mouth and spits them back at Nick, killing him. Meanwhile, Stanley arrives, leaving the detective and his dog in the car. When he enters the bar, he finds Tina tied up with a bomb next to her, set to explode in 10 minutes. Stanley sees his friend Charlie and gives him a gun to evacuate the people from the bar. Before he can save Tina, one of the gang members captures him. Tina comes up with a plan to provoke Dorian by telling him he is weak without the mask. Angered, Dorian confidently removes the mask. Tina seizes the opportunity and kicks the mask out of his hand. Suddenly, Stanley's dog appears, grabs the mask, and puts it on, transforming. The gang chases the dog to retrieve the mask, but the transformed dog manages to fight them off. Stanley eventually retrieves the mask from the dog, but unfortunately, it is knocked away by gunfire. Stanley finally grabs the mask and puts it on. Before the shooting continues, everyone is shocked to find numerous weapons pointed at them, causing them to panic and flee. It turns out the weapons are just toys. Stanley then swallows the bomb, which explodes inside him, but leaves him unharmed due to the mask's magic. At that moment, Dorian grabs a knife to attack him, but Stanley draws a cartoonish plunger, which becomes real. As Dorian approaches, Stanley uses the plunger to flush him down into a water basin, pulling him underground. Stanley removes the mask and walks with Tina to the bridge, where she takes the mask and throws it into the river. Welcome to Netflix, your quick stop for movie recaps. Get all the highlights and mind-blowing twists in just minutes. Our movie begins with a man named King sitting in front of his important employees, asking them what the true power in the world is. Some say military strength, intelligence, or cunning, until a woman named Ando says money. The king responds that her answer is correct, but very superficial, emphasizing that money must be used wisely. One of the men present, named Tongawa, adds that money must be used intelligently to become the tool for controlling the world. The king is impressed by his words and orders everyone to gather young people from everywhere to build his empire. We then shift to a young man, likely named Aito, who is incredibly unlucky and has never won anything in his life. He dreams of getting his share of fortune, but it never happens because of his bad luck. He works at a supermarket just to barely pay his rent and feels suffocated by everything around him, so much so that when he sees Mercedes cars parked in front of him, he insults their owners until he accidentally hits one of the cars and dents its door. One of the car owners and his companion chase him down and catch him. Their leader arrives and tells Aito they were specifically looking for him because they belong to a certain group. It turns out his friend had borrowed money from them and had been repaying it as agreed until he disappeared and they couldn't find him. Now, since Aito is the guarantor on the contract, he is responsible for repaying the remaining debt as soon as possible, or else they will deal with him violently. Aito cries over his misfortune, lamenting that he can't even afford to eat and is now in debt for money he doesn't have. Ando offers him a solution. If he wants to pay off his debt in just one day, he should go to a ship docked at the pier, where he could win a lot of money. Once he arrives, he'll learn how to win the competition. She gives him an invitation to board the ship. Having nothing to lose, and no loved ones who care about him, he sees the ship as his only hope to pay off the debt. He boards the ship and finds it filled with people in debt like him. Tongawa appears before them and announces that they are being hosted for a gambling game in which they must participate. To join the game, each person must have 3 stars, each worth 1 million yen. Tongawa offers to lend them the 3 million yen with an interest rate of 1% per minute. Anyone who wants to withdraw can do so at any time, but they must all understand that if they win the gamble, all their debts will be erased. Additionally, at the end of the game, he will buy back their stars at the same price. Players can also collect stars from others if they win against them. This means the winners will be debt-free and even have extra money. He distributes the 3 stars to them, which they attach to their chests, along with 12 playing cards. The first game is rock, paper, scissors, where the winner takes a star from the loser. The participants ask what happens to someone who loses all 3 stars, but Tongawa refuses to answer, telling them that their lives are worthless anyway, and no one will care if something happens to them. He advises them to focus on the game instead of asking pointless questions. They have only 30 minutes to play. Each person starts playing with the person next to them until the first person loses all 3 stars. Guards come and take him to a room with a black iron door. His voice gradually fades, and no one understands what happened to him inside. Meanwhile, the winners are taken to a white room, happy and cheerful. Aito's main goal is to play and hold on to at least 3 stars to avoid being taken to the black room. He befriends a man named Fion, who suggests that if they keep playing against each other and always tie, they will run out of cards while still keeping their 3 stars, allowing them to enter the White Room. Ato agrees, trusting him, and they begin playing. They keep tying until Fionn suddenly changes his strategy, plays a card, and wins a star from Ito. He apologizes, claiming he made a mistake in choosing the card, and promises to let Ito win the next round. Gullible, Ito believes him, and plays again, only to be tricked a second time. Now Fionn has 5 stars, and Ito is left with just 1. Realizing he's been deceived, Ito confronts Fionn and hits him, causing his last card to fall to the ground and get stained with blood. Fionn notices that Ito's last card, marked with blood, is scissors. The guards intervene to separate them as the other players gather around. To maintain his image as honest and fair, Fionn suggests they shuffle all the cards and redistribute them so that everyone gets the same number of cards they originally had, but with different designs. Ato meets another man who has 2 stars and considers throwing his cards away in the bathroom, but the guards catch him and return him to the hall. Ato approaches him, offering to help. He takes both his and the man's cards and gives them to Fionn to shuffle with the others. Fionn, however, plans to trick Ito again by giving him the same card marked with blood, knowing it is scissors, while marking his own card to play against Ito again. Fionn plans to use a rock card, as rock beats scissors. Ato and Fionn agree that if Ito wins, he will take 3 stars, but if he loses, he will give his stars to Fionn and the other man. They begin the game, and Fionn confidently plays his rock card, believing Ito's card is scissors. However, Ito surprises him by revealing his card is paper, which beats rock. Ato laughs, calling Fionn foolish for being tricked. It turns out Ito had swapped his marked card with a new one. Fionn loses all his cards and is left with only 2 stars after losing 3 stars. He is forced to leave the hall and enter the Black Room. With only 33 seconds remaining, Ato and his partner rush to finish their game. After winning, they think they will enter the White Room, but Ato's partner discovers he had forgotten one last card in his pocket, meaning he lost. Ato decides to share his partner's fate, just as they had planned to share the victory. Both enter the Black Room, where they are fitted with tracking devices on their shoulders and faces. They are transported to a remote location and treated as slaves, forbidden from leaving or escaping. Ato and his partner remain trapped together. They stay at the site for a long time, as if they are in prison, and Ato receives a strange currency he has never seen before. This currency can be used to buy items from a passing truck at the site, which also sells beer and food. Ato tries to resist spending his money, but eventually gives in and buys what he wants from the truck. He sits happily, eating and drinking what he purchased, and resumes work at the digging site the next day. A problem arises at the site, and Usa gets injured. Ato carries him on his back to the clinic, where they find many injured and sick people. Treatment requires payment, and since they have to work to pay, the injured who are unable to work remain untreated. Ato realizes that the site, the supervisor, and the truck's vendor are designed to tempt them into spending all their money, ensuring they remain perpetual slaves, unable to save enough to pay off their debts. The only way out is through a passage called the Passage of the Brave, which no one has ever returned from. Ato returns to his quarters and argues with his roommate and the supervisor, hoping to wake them up to the reality of their situation and their excessive spending, which keeps them trapped. During their conversation, an officer enters and informs them that one of their group has chosen to attempt the Passage of the Brave. Ito declares that he also wants to go, believing that whether he gains freedom or dies, he will win either way by escaping the hellish prison he is in. He is transferred to the passage along with Usa and another colleague. They find themselves on the rooftop of a very tall building, where Tanjawa appears. He explains that each person has a form worth 10 million yen, and whoever crosses the passage between the 2 towers will win the money and their freedom. However, those who fall will die. Ato decides to be the first to cross, hoping to win something for the first time in his life. Everyone else decides to follow. Tanjawa instructs them to wear numbers on their bodies so that the wealthy audience watching them through cameras can identify and bet on them. To To the audience, the contestants are nothing more than rats to gamble on. The bridge is also electrified, so anyone who tries to grab it with their hands will be electrocuted and killed. The contestants begin crossing the bridge, encouraged to be brave. The first one falls, grabs the bridge, gets electrocuted, and dies. One after another, contestants fall until only Usa, Aito, and one other remain. Usa resigns himself to death and asks Aito to take his form. He wants Aito to win the money and give it to his daughter, so she won't suffer like he did. Usa forcibly gives Aito his form. When Aito looks back to encourage Usa to keep going, he finds that Usa has also fallen. И зрение. Он обнаруживает, что Уса также упал. Aito decides to keep crossing the bridge slowly and carefully. It begins to rain, and the second contestant reaches the other tower and opens the door. However, the air pressure causes strong winds to blow him off the building, and he falls to his death. Aito manages to reach the other side at the last moment and enters the room, where Tanjiro stands waiting. Tanjiro congratulates him on his success. The king is also present and asks Aito what he wants. Aito demands his 12 million yen. Tanjiro informs him that 9.5 million yen has been deducted, and the 10 million yen from his friend cannot be claimed because his friend is dead. Aito becomes furious and declares that he doesn't want the money for himself, but for Usa's daughter, who deserves a better life. The king admires Aito's determination and honor and invites him to his suite. There, the king offers Aito a final game against Tanjiro, called the Emperor Game. If Aito loses, he will return to the site. If he wins, he will get the money he desires. The game consists of 5 cards for the Emperor and 5 for the prisoner. Each set contains 1 Emperor or prisoner card, with the rest being ordinary citizen cards. In each round, the cards are played against each other. A citizen beats a prisoner beats an emperor, and a tie occurs if 2 citizens face each other. The game is played over 3 rounds. Aito loses the first 2 rounds and is puzzled by how Tanjiro can predict his moves so easily. The guards prepare to take Aito back to the site, but Aito notices that Tanjiro had changed the clock during their game, indicating some form of cheating. He requests to go to the bathroom, where he thinks deeply. He asks Endo to lend him money for one last chance to play against Tanjiro. Endo agrees, trusting in Aito's ability to win. Aito approaches the king and requests one final round. The king agrees, and Aito goes to a nearby mirror, banging his head against it until it breaks and injures him. He then returns to the game table and quickly arranges his cards before Tanjiro can see them. Tanjiro uses a watch that monitors Aito's vital signs through a chip implanted in his shoulder. This allows Tanjiro to predict Aito's moves based on his stress levels. However, the adrenaline rush from Aito's self-inflicted pain disrupts the watch's readings, rendering it useless. The game begins, and Aito manipulates Tanjiro's thought process. With 2 cards left each, Tanjiro confidently plays the Emperor card, expecting to face a citizen and win. Instead, Aito plays the prisoner card, defeating the Emperor and winning the game. Aito takes the 500 million yen prize and orders the king to send Tanjiro to the construction site, as agreed. With his winnings, Aito goes to a restaurant with Endo, where he eats and drinks freely for the first time in a long while. After finishing his meal, he collapses, and Endo is the one who gave him the sedative so he could sleep and took all his money. When he wakes up, he finds a letter in his pocket from Endo, telling him that she had lent him a lot of money before so he could play another round. The money she took is her right, plus its interest. She leaves him a small amount of money to spend from. He sends all of it to his friend's daughter, as he promised. Finally, he is freed from the prison he was in and from the debts he owed. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to get more new videos. Welcome to Nextflix, your quick stop for movie recaps. Get all the highlights and mind-blowing twists in just minutes. Our movie begins with Nora and her father, Tobias, climbing a high mountain until they reach its peak. Her father tells her a mythical story about giants or trolls of the earth. Nora has heard the story so many times that she memorized it and now tells it to him. The story is about a wedding that took place long ago for the trolls of the earth. 13 trolls got so drunk that they lost track of time, and when the sun rose, they turned to stone, forming the mountains before them. Nora doesn't believe the story until her father asks her to focus on the mountains, with her heart before her eyes, and believe in their existence. At that moment, she begins to discern the faces of the giants and starts to believe in the mythical tale. 20 years later, Nora grows up to become a paleontologist, specializing in dinosaur fossils along the Atlantic coast. However, the university funding her excavation decides to stop the funding due to 6 months passing without any fossils or positive results. By chance, Nora discovers a dinosaur skeleton buried in the ground and calls her team to assist with the excavation. Meanwhile, in another area, construction work is underway to build new railway tunnels through the mountains. Protests arise to stop the destruction of the mountain and save nature. During the explosions, every tunnel the engineers build collapses on them due to a mistake in the detonation site. The incident is hidden from the media, and the event is filmed using military aircraft. Strange footprints are found around the mountain, as if they were giant tracks. Since no one can explain what happened, Nora and a group of geologists are immediately summoned to analyze the tracks. The explanation given is that the mountain explosions caused the soil to shift and the surface to collapse, creating these marks. However, Nora insists that the tracks are clearly footprints. Everyone laughs at her, especially the geology professor, dismissing her claims as nonsense and myths. This changes when a protester manages to film the explosion, and in the footage, a giant troll appears, causing the collapse. Nora's theory becomes the closest to reality. The Prime Minister appoints her as a scientific advisor to study the phenomenon. Nora, along with Andreas, the Prime Minister's office advisor, goes to the nearest site where unusual activity has been reported in the mountains. A house has been uprooted with ease, and the perpetrator is unknown. At the site, they meet Captain Chris from the Special Operations Command. The homeowners are questioned about what they saw, and they describe the sky being filled with clouds and a sudden shadow, as if the mountain itself moved, destroying their house. They hid in the basement and only came out to find their house displaced and giant footprints around it. Nora takes a helicopter to follow the tracks, which suddenly disappear after 20 kilometers, with no trace of the perpetrator and no signs of life in the area. She decides to seek help from her father, Tobias, to solve the mystery. Tobias, now elderly and living alone in isolation, has kept all the news related to the mountain trolls, as he is the only one who believes in their existence. He has even pinned a news article about the suspension of railway construction in the mountain for unknown reasons. Nora shows him the footage of the mountain's destruction and the giant troll that appeared. Tobias explains that trolls existed 1,000 years ago and that the culprit is a troll that emerged from the mountain. He claims they disappeared due to the spread of churches everywhere. Nora interrupts him, not understanding the connection between churches and the troll's disappearance, and asks him to speak rationally. She argues that if trolls existed, there would at least be nuclear residue in the mountains. Tobias insists they visit the site where the footprints disappeared. Nora is visibly at odds with her father, as he had previously been imprisoned and admitted to a mental institution for his obsessive research on trolls. Tobias notices something unusual about the site, as the terrain differs from the maps he has. While searching with Nora, they are shocked to find the mountain opening its eyes and moving. A colossal stone troll, over 40 meters tall, appears before them. They all rush to the helicopter to escape before the troll kills them. They film the troll to show the Prime Minister. At the Special Operations Command headquarters, Nora tries to explain the creature they saw in simple terms. Tobias, however, insists it is a real giant stone troll, and that trolls are not just myths. He warns that they should have anticipated the consequences of digging into the mountain, as nature always retaliates when disrupted. Tobias's irrational claims are dismissed, and the military is tasked with eliminating the creature immediately. Nora tries to convince Chris to let them accompany the mission, to observe from a distance without interfering or informing the Prime Minister, which could cause problems. Tobias reassures Chris, saying the troll will die before sunrise, as their mission will fail. At the designated site, weapons and tanks are prepared to confront the troll. They await its appearance, with orders to fire as soon as it is visible. Missiles and bullets are fired at the troll, but they have no effect. The troll begins destroying vehicles and tanks with ease, injuring a soldier and eating him in front of Nora. Everyone tries to flee the site, except Tobias, who calmly approaches the troll and attempts to communicate with it. The troll appears calm until a soldier shoots at it, enraging the troll. It strikes Tobias, throwing him far away. Nora rushes to her father to check on him, and he tells her she must believe and go to the palace, or the king. He dies in front of her. Must believe and go to the palace or the king. He dies in front of her. Nora, confused by her father's words, returns to headquarters to think about what is happening, the reason for the troll's appearance, and how it can move in sunlight when sunlight should petrify it. She reads her father's notes, hoping to find a solution. Through drawings and mythical stories, she discovers that trolls dislike religion and the sound of church bells. She devises a plan to control the troll's path using these bells. The Prime Minister approves the plan, as no weapons have been effective against the troll. They aim to guide the troll along a specific route to prevent it from nearing the city and causing destruction. Meanwhile, the troll heads toward a family park on the city's outskirts, and aircraft attempt to use the bells against it. And indeed, he is influenced by their voice, and they try to destroy him, becoming the reason for the destruction of 3 planes out of 4. Before the plane crashes onto a child in the park, the troll catches it and saves the child from death, moving the plane's wreckage away from him. But Nora's plan fails as the troll continues its path toward the capital, and there is no available way to stop it. Nora tries to convince the Prime Minister that they need to study the troll thoroughly before taking any steps against it. However, the minister completely cuts off her assistance due to the failure of her plan, ordering her to leave the headquarters immediately. When Andreas sees the minister's behavior, he decides to resign from his position and leaves the place with Nora. The Prime Minister prepares to issue a statement about evacuating Norway's capital as the troll is heading towards it, and their only option is to try using all weapons against it. Fearing for the citizens of the capital, they must leave their homes immediately before the troll approaches. The shooting and war against it begin, and Andreas and Nora are together, trying to escape the capital. Nora finds the name of a person nicknamed Sandung in her father's book, Tobias, who was also called the Gatekeeper. He tells her that he knows someone named Sandung who works at the royal palace. At that moment, Nora understands her father's reference to the palace, or the king, meaning the royal palace holds the solution to what is happening. They immediately head there to meet the person named Sandung. Sandung recognizes Nora upon seeing her because she resembles her father. He tells her that he expected her visit to understand what is happening, and that what he is about to show her is known to very few people. He explains to them that the royal palace was built on the site of an ancient palace, but it wasn't a human palace. It was a place belonging to trolls. Tobias discovered this and had to be dismissed and labeled insane, so no one would believe his words. He shows them a massive structure beneath the royal palace, explaining that long ago, a massacre of trolls occurred, killing them all, and the last one was imprisoned in the mountain. It could never escape, because if it did, direct sunlight would turn it to stone. Nora realizes that the troll imprisoned in the mountain escaped and was able to move because the sky was filled with clouds, preventing direct sunlight from reaching it. This is why it can move during daylight. She discovers a way to stop the troll before the armed forces launch their strongest missile at it. which would destroy the entire city along with the troll. She immediately seeks Chris's help to execute her plan, and they turn to his colleague at headquarters to try and delay the missile launch by any means. She successfully disrupts the launch system in the planes by hacking into the system with her device. Nora manages to load a giant skull onto a vehicle to lure the troll to follow her, knowing that the skull belongs to its kin. However, she accidentally drives onto a curb, causing the skull to fall from the vehicle, and the troll grabs it. It becomes evident that the troll is saddened by the death of its kin and being the last of its kind. When the skull falls from its hand, it shatters on the ground. The troll looks at Nora's vehicle and decides to chase them to seek revenge for what happened to its kin. It continues destroying everything in its path as it runs, while Nora tries to stay away from it as much as possible. She reaches the location Chris was informed about to lure the troll there. Andreas's colleague maintains control over the aircraft system until a doctor at headquarters notices she is the only one doing something on her laptop. They forcibly take it from her and arrest her for disobeying orders, regaining control over the planes and preparing to launch the missile at the troll. Chris is in position, equipped with special lights resembling sunlight to expose the troll to them. As soon as the troll approaches, all the lights are turned on and its legs turn to stone. Nora's plan succeeds, but she feels guilty as it continues to suffer in front of her, realizing she is killing it. She decides to turn off the main generator, powering the lights, going underneath the troll's legs, as her father once did, and pleading with it to return to the mountains, assuring it she doesn't want to harm or hurt it. Before the plane launches the missile, they discover civilians in the area, prompting the general to order a halt to the missile launch. However, the doctor insists on firing to eliminate the troll at any cost, shouting until Andreas's colleague punches him to silence him. The missile launch order is stopped, and Nora tries to convince the troll to return to the mountain. Before she finishes speaking, the clouds part and the sun rises. Sunlight reaches the troll, turning it to stone. It collapses in front of Nora, who watches as it turns to stone and dies before her, just as her father always described. Nora's plan successfully stops the troll and saves an entire city from destruction. She considers naming the troll's petrified body Tobias's Rock. The Prime Minister personally thanks her for her brave actions in saving the entire city. Andreas asks her if there might be other trolls in the mountains, to which she responds with enthusiasm, indicating her intention to search for them and continue her father's research. A movement appears in the heart of the mountain where the explosion occurred, as if what happened was the beginning of the troll's return to Earth. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you did, make sure to subscribe for more awesome content. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Nora's plan succeeds, but she feels guilty as it continues to suffer in front of her, realizing she is killing it. She decides to turn off the main generator, powering the lights, going underneath the troll's legs, as her father once did, and pleading with it to return to the mountains, assuring it she doesn't want to harm or hurt it. Before the plane launches the missile, they discover civilians in the area, prompting the general to order a halt to the missile launch. However, the doctor insists on firing to eliminate the troll at any cost, shouting until Andreas's colleague punches him to silence him. The missile launch order is stopped, and Nora tries to convince the troll to return to the mountain. Before she finishes speaking, the clouds part and the sun rises. Sunlight reaches the troll, turning it to stone. It collapses in front of Nora, who watches as it turns to stone and dies before her, just as her father always described. Nora's plan successfully stops the troll and saves an entire city from destruction. She considers naming the troll's petrified body Tobias's Rock. The Prime Minister personally thanks her for her brave actions in saving the entire city. Andreas asks her if there might be other trolls in the mountains, to which she responds with enthusiasm, indicating her intention to search for them and continue her father's research. A movement appears in the heart of the mountain where the explosion occurred, as if what happened was the beginning of the Trolls' return to Earth. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you did, make sure to subscribe for more awesome content. Thanks for watching, and I'll